Keep the red flag flying here.
Yeah, no, it's very good. Yeah. Thank you.
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, Kenmure Street. Yeah. Okay, I'm Mohammad Asif, as you said. I'm from Afghanistan originally, came to Glasgow nearly 21 years ago, arrived in London, and then I was told by the Home Office that London was full and we have to go to Glasgow, which I'm very pleased and now thankful to the Home Office in some ways that I have come here. No disrespect to London or any other parts, but, Glasgow has, done me lots of good things. And then the very night I arrived here in Glasgow, we had other friends and colleagues. And during then, we saw the conditions for asylum seekers, which were really, really bad. During that time, they had, under the Labour government, they had these vouchers, asylum seekers were not getting any money, but they had this scheme, you just get the vouchers and you buy your daily stuff. And these vouchers were not even, used in every shop. There were particular shops. You need to go to these shops. But then a colleague of mine who is now deceased from Nigeria, we share a flat. And we had a pact, it's like a pact between Tony Blair and Gordon Brown. So we signed a pact that we need to campaign on behalf of asylum seekers because conditions were really, really bad. And there was a lot of racism, hostility against asylum seekers, the right-wing media and politicians feeding the wrong news to the Scottish people that we were getting £300 a week. And in reality, we were not getting any money during that time. Or, the equivalent of vouchers were only £36 a week. And after 21 years, the Home Office is generous enough, they have increases to £38. So 21 years ago, asylum seekers used to get £36. Now it's £38 after 21 years. So it's £2 increase. So we started campaigning, myself and a guy called from Nigeria, Eniola Adivali, who sadly passed away about 6 years ago in London, a very special guy, very humanitarian guy. And then that's how we got involved with the campaigning of asylum seekers and refugees. And then the Afghanistan war came, when Britain and America went to the war in Afghanistan, and then the Iraq illegal invasion of Iraq came. And then we got involved in so many different issues, but the main issues to us were asylum seekers issues and refugees here in Glasgow. And that's how we got involved until today. And, things are still difficult for asylum seekers. It's getting more tough, although we have a lot of wars going on around the world. And for mainly, because every time we say why so many asylum seekers come to Britain or Europe, the answer is maybe not that simple, but it is a little bit simple. If Britain and America and other countries bomb less countries and displace less people, so, when you bomb a country, you displace about, the entire population. So people move around, there is no place for them to live. So either they move to Europe or other countries, but the vast majority of people, they go to the neighboring countries. Like Pakistan was a poor country. They had about, 7 million Afghans, 3 million in Iran, Lebanon is a poor country. They have millions of Palestinians. Jordan have millions of Palestinians. Now Iraq, plenty of millions of asylum seekers from Iraq. Syria and Libya is the same. Well, they were prosperous countries in the past. Civilization started in Iraq. Now Iraq is a forgotten story. So when the same very people make it to Britain or Europe, then we have an outcry from the right wing and right wing politician, not even from the right wing, but nowadays from the mainstream. Even George Galloway is nowadays, against the, protest against the Home Office. He put a tweet yesterday, he's saying that an illegal, he called the Scottish Parliament an assembly. It's not an assembly, it's an independent Scottish Parliament. It's a disgrace that our former friend George Galloway is using such words, just to say that so many things are happening right now. But asylum seekers are the political football in Britain, in Europe. The harder you kick them, the better player you become. It doesn't matter which party is in power. But we always say that asylum seekers don't look for special treatment. All they want is, a dignified system which treat people equally and fairly and justly. I don't think so. Anyone is asking for special treatment, and their treatment is just under the Geneva Convention. That anyone is entitled to an asylum claim here, whether he or she succeed or fail that claim. But you need to look at the process. But sadly, the process in Britain and Europe is very biased. Even some European countries are boycotting to take Muslim asylum seekers. They say they only want Christian asylum seekers in Europe. For example, Hungary, in Romania, and other countries. But the bulks of asylum seekers are Muslims because their countries are at war, or whether there is rogue regimes in power with the help of Britain and America and others. And there is illegal wars going on again by America and Britain and the rest of the Europe. So when the very people come here, they're blame or given so many different names. When we came, we were told that you're scroungers. You're stealing our jobs. And you are getting our money. That amount of money. I mean, £36, 21 years ago, and now 21 years later, £38 a week is unbelievable. Where you look at the inflation. Yes. Asylum seekers get free accommodation, but that accommodation is on a no choice basis. You can be given an accommodation somewhere far away where you don't speak the language, you don't understand the culture, you don't speak, you don't know anyone. There's no community around you who can, go and help you. And if you don't take that accommodation, you are left homeless or destitute. And then we see the right-wing media and the right-wing politician, even the mainstream media nowadays, they're very selfish. And, all you need is a house. I mean, imagine you going to China, knowing no one, don't speak the language, don't understand the culture. And on the top, you're kicked on the daily basis. So life will be, a misery probably for you. But we got no choice, There are so many liberties in this country, which is a civilized and democratic society. Seekers from, for example, to have, it's my house. Yes, you have given me an accommodation, but not allowed to have my guest. I'm not allowed to leave. Like if I'm an asylum seeker in Glasgow, I cannot go and visit London. For a certain amount of time. There is even in certain cases, I'm not allowed to marry. You can fall in love with someone and you really love that person, whether he or she you love, you need to seek permission from the Home Office. And the easy answer they give you is a fake marriage. Why would someone have a fake marriage? Yes, we understand there are individuals, or maybe there are elements, who misuse the system, but the bulk of asylum seekers, the majority are from the war-torn countries who come here, and seek sanctuary. But sadly, it's all, whenever I say it's interlinks with UK foreign policies. If the foreign policy was fair and just, not removing regimes in launching illegal wars, in selling weapons to rogue regimes, like Saudi Arabia and others, killing the Yemenis in, and other countries. So we would have less asylum seekers. I can talk to you for months in days, and it will not finish. But it's just all we want is, the bottom line is a fair and just system where you are treated like a human being. You're not just treated a number. Right now, asylum seekers are just a number for the Home Office. You look at their statistic, they just give a number. This year, this many numbers has come or refused or gone or accepted. So it's not like you are just, a citizen of this country, where you can have certain rights. And this is the only country in the Western Europe, Britain, who detain asylum seekers indefinitely. It doesn't happen in any other country apart from Britain, where you can be detained indefinitely. And I know people who have been in detention center for 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, 2 years, and when things were taken to the court and the Home Office was fined, for illegal detention. It doesn't happen in any other European country. I'm sorry, I'm just talking too much. So
it's wonderful to hear. Not wonderful to hear what you've been through, but it's wonderful to hear that, from first hand what's actually gone on. And I think a lot of the time, refugees and asylum seekers are, they're dehumanized, but to have a human face and to have that story there, I think you'd have to be an awful person to hear that story and begrudge anyone the tiny amount of money that you're getting to live on in a week as an asylum seeker in this country. So something big happened this week, as we mentioned earlier on. I'm going to bring in Laura and James, because my plan, Laura and James, that I haven't told you yet, is for you to come in and ask questions and contribute as and when you like. But I'd just like you to set out, Mohammed, please, if you don't mind, what actually happened this week. So if imagine none of our listeners have heard anything about Kenmure Street at all this week in Glasgow. So can you tell us a little bit about, what happened, how it started, and what the outcome was?
Just to give you a little bit of information, dawn raids happen in Scotland since 2001, but it got really worse since 2003. And people stood against the dawn raids because it's like you're sleeping in your bed and suddenly, someone like a mafia type of people burst into your house, force their entry and then bundle you in the middle of the night or early hours of the morning. It used to happen to children. They even collected children in their school uniform from school and then detained them, then, raided their homes, children screaming and shouting in the middle of the night or late hours in the morning. And then the Scottish government or the Scottish Parliament, the politician in the campaigners, trade unions, they came and they asked the Home Office they should stop this policy, and they stopped for some time. But then behind the scene, they were still doing it. So what happened yesterday was the same policy of the Home Office went into the two boys' house in Pollokshields, which is the area called on Kenmure Street in Glasgow, which is the south side of Glasgow. It's the most diverse community in the whole of Scotland, multicultural area in the whole of Scotland. And then burst into their house. When I asked the guy, they say he was sleeping in his bed. And when people knock on the door and his father answered the door, and they forced their entry into their house and took the guys out and, handcuffed them with the help. All those not Strathclyde police anymore, but Police Scotland, they were there for health and safety issues, because they always tell us that they're not part of the immigration removal team, but they are there to facilitate, for the sake of health and safety. So someone actually followed the van from the Home Office, because there's a team, anti dawn raids team. So they watch the Home Office when the vans are leaving the Home Office. So they follow the van where the van is going. So someone followed that van from their team, which is really, they're doing a great job. And when the van stopped at that particular street, so when the guy waited, and when, the guys were out, so he threw himself under the van, a very brave guy, and spending almost 9 hours underneath the van, with a pillow or mattress, and not sleeping, lying rough on the rough road surface. And then people gather, the neighbors, because the guys are living there for so long. The shopkeepers know them, the local community know them. and people gather a small group and then increase it. The message went on a social media. I went for my Eid prayer as it's Eid. Today I have some sort of proper Eid in the house, so I was in the mosque when someone sent me a message that there is a dawn raid, if you can let the media know. So I sent text messages to some of my friends, journalist friends who are very good, and then they put out a message, and then the crowd increased. By the time I arrived and my colleagues arrived, so we sent messages to almost everyone to come down to Kenmure Street and protest against the removal of these two boys, because our fight is not about the two boys. It's about the system here. The system is just like a mafia style, and they try to, really scare you. It's a very bad tactics they use. So people gather in, the crowd was, and people said 200, it was in their thousands, it wasn't 200. You can see the actual video, it's like thousands of them. But then I tried to text messages to some of the politicians to issue statements and, support us. But then it was on the day where the Scottish Parliament was their first day of reopening, and the MSPs were taking the oath of office. But luckily, many of them replied, and then we put them on the megaphone, and they spoke to the crowd, where the crowd got more energy, and then they said the politicians are on our side, which is really good. And so the police size also increased, few hundred of them came, they had a riot squad as well, waiting somewhere further away. They were having horses waiting further away. We tried to negotiate with the police. One of them said it's COVID and it's illegal, but you're forced sometime. You had no choice when your life is at risk, and you need to stand for justice. You don't really look, what's going to happen to me or to someone else. And it was an individual decision. We told the officer, I said we can leave within 2 minutes. If you release the guys, we will just go. We will not stand here. And we had the first question from the BBC as well, that do you not feel embarrassed that it's, COVID? And that was the first question from the BBC. I don't know the lady. She was a new lady. That, do you not feel embarrassed it's COVID? But we told exactly the same. I say, we're forced to be here. They can release the guys and we can just go home. Who wants to be there on a cold morning, sitting on the floor or standing there? And then we tried to negotiate different ways with the police, but it failed. And then we found out that our First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon, the Justice Secretary, and other politicians were trying to speak to the Home Office, but the Home Office totally ignored them. They were put to a very junior officer in the Home Office. She's the First Minister of a country. You need to pay some sort of respect to her. She's a First Minister, a Justice Secretary, whether you like it, you don't like it. They're our elected politicians here. Whether I am in their party, I'm not in their party, it's another matter. But she is our First Minister. The guy is our, Justice Secretary. And according to them, they put out statements, and they said, they were, firstly, they were ignored. And then they were faced with very junior ranking civil servant at the Home Office, which is really embarrassing for the Home Office to be, treating such elected politician who represent, majority of this country, or, whether you voted for her or you didn't vote for her, it's another matter, but she's the First Minister of this country. And then after many years of negotiation, I know my very good friend, probably as well, I know him for nearly 21 years. He was the first I met in Glasgow when we joined our campaigning. So he arrived, and he also negotiated with the police. And then finally, the deal was that it wasn't really the Home Office who released them. The police released, they said they were not going to take the risk because the crowd was good and they were not going to remove people. Although they tried once, but they failed. They were trying to bundle people, but they failed. People refused to go. And we just appealed to the protesters that we have to keep it very peaceful. And the police were trying to intimidate us, some of the officers, not all. So they wanted to become, or to make it ugly. So, these things can end up in a different way. But the protesters were wise enough. They were from every background. We had Jewish, we have Muslims, we have Christian, we have Hindus, we had people who had no religion, we had Africans, we have everyone, from different countries, and they were sitting there chanting. They said, and we were giving speeches, chants, myself and my colleagues. And we just appealed to them that we are going to stay here, even if it takes days. We are not going away until these guys were released. But finally, the Police Scotland, they decided that it was not going to work. So they have a deal with R and myself that we will take the guys to the mosque. But one of the mosques, the religious center, was not really safe because there were some in the crowd who you have all sort of people, just about four of them who wanted it for everybody. So we decided to go to another mosque or another religious center who accommodated us, thankfully. And there, the guys were released, and everybody dispersed, and the police went, the boys went to the house. So that's a very short story.
It's just what a brilliant story of solidarity that is, and the story of people of all different religions coming together, and all different religions and none coming together to support one another, to support other human beings. That's what this story is about, really, at the heart of it.
I mean, the best thing was when the people were chanting, "They are our neighbors," that, your hair can really stand, so you call it goosebumps or whatever. Mm. When they were chanting, "They're our neighbors," that really, really makes everybody's day, where strangers came out and saying that they were our neighbors, and it's all due to Priti Patel, because, the new legislation on asylum and immigration, the way they treated the Windrush generation, people who lived here for 60, 70 years, the way they were treated. Migrants and refugees, sometimes sadly, some people say, we are from the same background, black background, and you should be thankful that you have someone at a very high position in the government. I rather don't have someone, who looks like me, but who's horrible, and horrible to other human beings. So I rather have someone, maybe where he or she comes from, but as long as it's fair and just to everyone, so I'm happy with that choice rather than an elite who has no common touch with the ordinary citizens in this country, who is just a multimillionaire and who is corrupt from top to bottom. I mean, she, I'm not going into it, but she is a corrupt lady, and she is a very biased and very unjust lady.
Yeah, I think you'd get a lot of agreement. Yeah. Laura, James, do you have anything to add? Any questions?
I just want to sort of make the comment just how in awe I am of how incredible of an organisational job that was in a short space of time, getting that many people, and it just shows the strength of feeling on this, which I think people need to see, because I think a lot of people are getting disheartened by the rhetoric that our governments have for far too long pushed, that they've othered refugees and asylum seekers and they're not us and they don't belong and all of that, and that has trickled down into normal people's consciousness, and I think it's
I mean, the worst part is when Priti Patel put asylum seekers in a military barracks, some during the corona, and nearly 300 asylum seekers got coronavirus, and what everybody was telling them, campaigners and activists and political parties, that it's not a good place. There was no, imagine in Britain you don't have running water, and you're put in that place, even in Glasgow, during the coronavirus, so one of the accommodation providers decided to take people out of their flats and put them in the hotel, because hotels were cheaper for the company, and things really gone worse. Mental health issues, no social distancing during the peak of corona in the hotel, and then one of the asylum seekers got mad and took a knife and stabbed others, including a police officer, when he was shot dead by the police. Sadly, and the guy told the accommodation provider that he's having mental issues. But no one really bothered. They just because it was a decision, financial decision, they took people out of their homes and put them in the hotel because hotels were lying empty. No one was living in the hotel, so it was a cheaper option for the company, and they were making over £12,000 a day. At the expense of asylum seekers in Glasgow. That particular company, but there's a lot of things, but above all, I think if you ask any asylum seekers, they're not after, more money. They won't tell you we want more money. They'll just tell you treat us nicely and treat us like human beings, like you would treat another human being. It's what they want.
I think it's just the absolute absence of any sort of empathy from the government in favour of just nasty capitalism. And you're right, you know, asylum seekers are a handy tool to chuck about at election time, and it's absolutely. But that's why what happened in Glasgow was so special, because it showed you that that's not really true. Most people do care, and I got the goosebumps as well listening to everyone say they're our neighbours. It was so heartwarming and lovely, and you've seen the protests. This week there's been loads today around Palestine. People here do care about. They are internationalists. They do care about other people, and it goes to show that if we do come out in force and we do all speak up, it does work. That was successful. I mean, obviously you had to get a hell of a lot of people to do it, but there's a lot of us, and I think if we keep going,
but to choose a day like it's whether the guys were Muslims or not Muslims, but the area is predominantly Muslim area. To choose a day like this on the day of Eid, the first day of Eid, you don't really care about the what do you call the how other people think, and their religion and their culture. It's a multicultural society, and that area is just one of the most diverse in Scotland. But luckily we have politicians in Scotland who support our causes. Scotland is the first country to allow refugees to vote. Just in the concluded elections, many refugees have voted. I don't know how they voted, but, they were allowed to vote. So we are, but it's sad again that, because the Scottish government doesn't have any powers, everything is decided, somewhere else. But again, we are lucky enough that we live in this city. I mean, there are thousands of people, as you said, like today in London, people were marching for Palestine, tomorrow is in Glasgow, and then, in major parts of the UK, what's happening in Gaza, it's also linked because millions of Palestinian refugees are displaced, and I know many of them are in Glasgow or in Scotland, millions of Syrians, plenty of them are in Scotland now. It's the majority of Syrian refugees come to Scotland, for relocation, or there's a new name for it. So most of them are in the north of Scotland, and if you go to these communities and ask them, they love the Syrian refugees because they bring new talents, new skills in the area, opening new restaurants, barber shops, businesses, scientists, doctors. And if you go, the north of Scotland, they haven't seen refugees before, but now they're welcoming them because they know it's benefiting their life in the culture, in the society, rather than becoming a burden. I lived here for 21 years. When I arrived, I was not allowed to work. After 6 months, when I was allowed to work, and I work and work and work and work.
There's a couple of things. I've lived in Glasgow. For me, it was a massive culture shock because I've come where I live. It's not as multicultural as a few cities. But when I moved to Glasgow, I moved in it's where the arches are near the quayside.
Yes, sir. Mm-hmm.
In there it was really multicultural. You got all like your Lebanese restaurants and stuff like that. You got all the different multicultural restaurants in that region, as well as the market in the arches, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and for me it was a huge shock, but it was very welcoming. Yeah, I could not have asked for a better experience of just walking in. Didn't know what I was doing. Didn't even know half of the ingredients I was looking at half of the time.
I mean, no disrespect to any city or any part of the Britain, but if you ask a guy who's homeless or selling big issues on the street, and you approach him and ask him for direction, he will walk with you, to that particular place and take you there, say that's the place, without expecting you to pay him anything, But as again, there are people, you cannot change their mind, who don't like asylum seeker. They just don't like them. No matter what you do is how much you preach, they just made up their mind and they say no, that's it.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned sorry, it was the anti-dawn team coming out outside of the detention, and you mentioned the detention centres as well. We're currently having one going on right now, right, in County Durham. This is to the other two County Durham located people, and there's been protests and everything regarding that. I'm just wondering, is that on your radar at all, Mohammed? Or
I don't know, to be honest. Because in Scotland, we only have one detention center, which is called the Dungavel, which is out of Glasgow. It's, I think it's an area called Straven. It's nearly an hour journey by car from the city center. The Home Office tried to get another detention center next to the Glasgow airport, but permission was not granted by the council because they knew if they have a detention center next to the airport and then activists will come and protest. So they did not give them any permission or granted the license to have a detention center next to the airport. So there's one detention center, and the Home Office is very clever enough. When they detain people in England, they bring them to Dungavel. So you are far away from your community. You are away from, your lawyer and people who are supporting you. And when they detain people in Scotland, they take them down south. So make it hard for your lawyer and friends and supporters to travel down south. So this is what the Home Office does, taking people from one place to another. But the Scottish government said many, many times, campaigners and activists, that this place should be closed and people should live in community rather than in detention center, because it's not really good for anyone. But it is really 21st century. The statistics of Home Office that where asylum seekers, which countries asylum seekers are coming from. These are the countries where there's an active war or a war for the past 20 or 30 or 40 years, like Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, Libya, Lebanon, Palestine, Sudan, Somalia. These are the countries, where there is a war for, many, many years. And there's hardly anything left for them, and when people come here, it's really, really, a misery. I know literally, if you go to the NHS in Scotland and you look at their statistics, many asylum seekers are having PTSD, they're having mental health issues, because firstly, they're from war-torn countries. No matter how safe that country is, you have seen, poverty, you have wars, you have seen bombs, it affects your mental health, organization freedom from torture, you go and see their statistics, they're an independent organization. Amnesty International, independent organization, it's not taking side with anyone. And if you look at their statistics, the people who arrive here are really the victims of persecution. Some of my colleagues here in Scotland, their relatives were not killed by Taliban, but they were killed in American bombing, in Afghanistan. So it's not just one party that you flee. And then the funny thing is, the laughable thing is, when the British government said you should take legal route, illegal legislation, people who arrive illegally in Britain, they will not be granted asylum. So, for example, if I'm running persecution or sort of problem in Afghanistan or Libya, firstly, the British embassies or high commissions, you not go near them. It's like in 2 kilometers near them because of the security problem. Firstly, you will never be able to approach the British embassy or high commission for help, even if you go to their embassy and you make it. And if you tell them my life is in danger, do you really think they will issue your visa and say you go to Britain? Then again, we have shown every legal route, for people to come to Britain. Even that, I don't know if you're familiar with the Dubs Amendments, where a young unaccompanied children. Theresa May promised to take 3,000 from Europe unaccompanied minors who are just like 12 years old, 16 years old. And now the current Home Secretary, shut down that route as well for young unaccompanied minors, and shut down every single legal, from different countries. One can make it legally to Britain. The only way you can come to Britain is on the back of the lorry, or on the boat, or the dinghy, or whatever you call it. So how legally, when you are running away from execution, there is no way. If you are very lucky, 1 in 100,000 or 1 in 10,000 or 50,000, you will make it. But the rest will not make it legally here to the UK or Europe or anywhere else.
Yeah, that's the problem, isn't it? Because people talk about legality of people being here, but unless you make legal routes, then how can people be here legally? It's impossible to do that. I've had a really good comment, and there's been it's quite lively in the chat tonight, actually. There's lots of people making comments. One of the comments is one that, it's basically how we can help. So Kat Cray, who's absolutely brilliant, we love her on this channel. She's been on the show for a couple of reasons, with the Women's Banner Group and with the RMT. As a trade unionist in our workplaces, such as mine, the railway, we sometimes witness immigration checks. What can we do to help in that moment?
It's very hard, when you have immigration checks, you're on the train or coming, from somewhere. And if you don't look the same as other people look like, so you're the first one to be targeted. I think that the best way is to mobilize your community, although, it's maybe they will tell you you're committing a crime, you're causing an obstruction, in the way of immigration or police officers. But the best way is like what we did in Glasgow, mobilize the community, love your neighbor and look after your neighbor. Like during this coronavirus, one thing positive which came out was, look for your neighbor, and the poor and ordinary citizens of this country look after one another. I think this is one of the way that you can mobilize your neighbor and know your neighbors, yet who is living in your area. I learned a lot of new things during coronavirus. I went around with my daughters and my family, the very little help we provided, maybe we could have gone to pharmacy, pick up medicine for someone else, it doesn't matter whether you're an asylum seeker or refugee. It's what we did. But mobilizing the community, making links, and especially educating the young generation, because, telling them that what is happening, around the world, have a look what is happening. People don't make the choices to, come from Libya or Syria, taking the dangerous route to the Mediterranean, and many of them are drowned. Many of them are drowned crossing from Turkey to Greece. Hundreds of asylum seekers, or thousands from Afghanistan and Syria and Iraq, are drowned between the sea, between Turkey and Greece, and coming from Libya, in the Mediterranean. So who would do that, while you're young children, the only treasure you have in your life, your children, and that for sure something might go wrong with you in the sea. It's just to save your skin and save your life. I don't think so any person will do it for pleasure, or any person will do it for money. You will never get your children back once they're drowned in the sea. So what would you do with the money? No matter how much money you will have, and this tragedy will never, leave you. It will be in your head forever until you're alive. So no one makes the choice unless, they are forced to go. When I saw people coming over from France to Britain by dinghies, and we had, what is that thing, military ship, I don't know, they call it a special name. And then they had fighter jets patrolling the channel crossing, and someone said, we're invaded by asylum seekers. You don't know how an invasion looked like. You go to Iraq and see, the country has been destroyed, their livelihood, their homes, their, children, their family members, they had nothing left. That's an invasion. Go to Afghanistan, go to Syria, Libya. Look what an invasion looked like. It's not 10 asylum seekers a day or 100 asylum seekers a week or 500 crossing into Britain is an invasion. That's not, and that is, Britain is responsible. If you look at these countries, the top producing asylum seekers countries, it is Britain, America, France, and some other countries, and some other European countries are responsible for the creation of asylum seekers, because of the wars, the wars that Britain and America went into Afghanistan and Iraq and Syria and Libya and Sudan, Somalia, in supporting, rogue regimes and dictators, around the world. And the victims of, war, when they arrive here, they are not wanted here. Some call them scoundrels, some call them, they are bringing disease, some call them, I don't know, different names, I even saw some years ago, I think it was 2001, headline in one of the right-wing newspaper, that asylum seekers stole a donkey on the beach of Blackpool, and slaughtered it and eat it. Firstly, Somali asylum seekers, they say Somali asylum seekers, that was years ago. Firstly, Muslims don't eat donkeys because it's forbidden in their religion. And it will be very hard to steal a donkey on the, Blackpool beach, because donkey makes good money on the Blackpool. A ride is, I think, £10, or £5. I think I remember it was £5 when I went to Blackpool beach some years ago. So, Muslims don't eat donkeys unless you're dying of hunger, then you're allowed to eat. And then there was another headline in the front page that asylum seekers looking people, stole the queen swan, some sort of birds. And they stole the swan, slaughtered it, and barbecue it near the palace. How would that be possible? You go in and steal the queen swan and slaughter them, and the sort of headlines. People will think it's a front line. It must be true. I mean, people when they read newspapers, they must be thinking it's true. It's not true. A lot of rubbish are printed in the newspapers. It has no reality or no facts in it.
Very, very sad to say that all the swans are the Queen swans, so that's why they're referred to as the Queen swans. Apparently, the Queen owns all the swans in this country. Just a little bit of trivia that obviously is quite a funny one. But yeah, she owns all the swans, and another obscure rule: if you find a whale on a beach, it was in
the headlines, and the national newspapers, and people when they read it, they must be thinking, yes, they are the one, who stole it.
Yeah, it's absolutely absurd, isn't it? Thank you for you can't see these, Mohammed, but there's so many supportive comments coming in.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
All the time, and what a wonderful story that you've told, and what a wonderful speaker that you are. We're really glad to have you on, because people need to hear these stories. I'm going to bring in Laura and James for a minute just to ask if there's anything that you'd like Mohammed to address. I know that, James, you were interested in speaking about the work that Mohammed does. Is that right?
Yeah. So you're part of or I think you're director of, should I say, the Afghan Human Rights Foundation. It's just, is there any chance you can elaborate of what that's about and how other people can get in touch and help out and maybe get involved?
I mean, it's quite easy. You can send us a text or a message. But what we do is we only, the name is Afghan Human Rights, but we work with everyone. It's 100% volunteer. There is no payment involved. There is nothing. Whatever we do is we do it at our own expense. We don't ask for collections or money or charity or donations, nothing like that. We do it on the volunteer basis. But when I came here, I have done different jobs. My first job was in a 24-hour shop because I didn't know anyone. And then my next job was in a local college called Anisland College. I was a student advisor there. And then I worked for the Ministry of Justice as a legal interpreter or translator. Then I worked, also in the UK Defence Academy in Swindon, teaching culture and religion on a freelance basis. And Currently also I'm doing mostly legal work, mostly translations, and I'm self-employed doing my own work, but also I volunteer with different charities and different organizations, wherever we have the time. So we go out and help. But most importantly, I campaign for the rights of asylum seekers and refugees, and so many other causes. I was still an anti-war activist. Jeremy invited me many times. The very last time he invited me was into the British Parliament. And, we spoke along against the war in Afghanistan and Iraq and other parts of the world. And we still do that. He's a great man, a wonderful man. So, every human beings have their own shortcomings. But, when it comes to human rights issues, Jeremy is at the top. He doesn't give in, like many others would, give in into pressure, from certain groups. And would change, like George Galloway. I don't know what he's up to just now. I supposed to be on his show this today in London. The American troops would travel from Afghanistan, so I refused to go after what I saw his tweets. So I told him I'm not coming. Mm-hmm. Oh, his researcher, not him, but his researcher. Mm-hmm.
Laura, have you got any?
Yeah, I mean, God, there's so much. I honestly could sit and talk to you for hours about this. Well, listen to you, because it's been so enlightening. And I'm sure you probably don't take this on board, but I want to thank you so much for coming on. And I really
pleasure,
do
no
feel...
problem. Thank you for having me.
I feel like you're such an inspirational person. And I honestly believe that people listening to you tonight will really just get a bit of hope from you. And know that there's a direction, and so much of what you said has really resonated with me, especially the fact that if we're that bothered about asylum seekers, stop bombing them. We our country is basically complicit in this. We've I think we also, as well as being helpful and being neighbourly and getting to know our communities and being supportive, I actually think we need to get involved in sort of disarmament campaigns.
Yeah, I mean, I did. I wrote a letter to Tony Blair when after 9/11, when I knew that Britain and others were going into Afghanistan. So I wrote him a letter, and a very good letter, which was published later on in Times newspaper. I think it was in 2001. I wrote to him. I told him that Taliban are a bunch of terrorists who are still terrorists, terrorizing innocent Afghans and others. That if we are going to remove the Taliban, who are we going to support? Because the warlords prior to the Taliban and the drug lords who are currently in power, they were worse than the Taliban. You replace one killer with another killer. It's like, you want to know who killed more or who killed less so you can put them in power. And Tony Blair said, this time we will not walk away from Afghanistan after the Soviet or the USSR invasion of Afghanistan, because the West abandoned Afghanistan in the 90s once the Russians were defeated. And Tony Blair, in his own words, he replied to my letter that he will not abandon the Afghans. This time he will stand with the Afghans. The West will stand with the Afghans. And there will be a regime which will be, representative of the Afghans. But what they did was empower the most vicious warlords, drug lords and genociders and mass killers who are still in power and still calling the shots. For us, there's no difference between the Taliban and the warlords and the drug lords. They were in the power prior to the Taliban, and they were killing innocent Afghans. And when the Taliban came, they did the same. So I still remember the words of Tony Blair, that he said he will not walk away from Afghans. But sadly, that didn't really happen. What they did was because they needed people who can carry their dirty work in Afghanistan, and their dirty work can be carried only by drug lords and warlords and the genocider. A person who has killed 7,000 in 1 week is becoming the, marshal, the rank of marshal. A person who has killed so many people is given the rank of military general. The man doesn't even went to a military school. He's a graduate of madrasa, religious school, but you become a military general. I don't know how that works. So the dirty people were in power, and to Afghans, it didn't really make any difference. Like for me, in ordinary Afghans, It's just like when the corona stuck here, you were working, I was working, everybody was working, and the rich were asking for bailouts. That's how it works.
Yeah, absolutely. We could go on at this absolutely all night, but I know that you've had some sad
No,
news,
I send my
Mohammed.
daughter. If you want me, I can.
Do
She's
you,
away, so
well,
yeah, I send her.
if
Yeah,
you're happy to stay a little bit longer, we would love to
yeah,
have you for a
I'm
little
happy.
bit
Yeah,
longer.
so she's away. She's doing my job.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
brilliant. That's our gain, certainly. So you spoke about Afghanistan there, and people don't seem to understand that it seems people have been using it as I don't know, as a strategic place in a battle, haven't they? So there was Russia that invaded Afghanistan, and then it changed to a lot of UK Western UK US Western influence there. You know, what sort of effect does that have on the people of Afghanistan?
You see, when Britain and America went, but Britain has changed their policies on Afghanistan 11 times. Firstly, they said they were there to fight Al Qaeda. Then they said they were there to fight the drug trade. I visited the British military bases in Afghanistan when I was working in Afghanistan some years ago. And literally in front of the military bases, the poppy were growing. I asked one of the officers, I thought your mission was to get rid of the, drug trade and opium trade. And he was saying that if we touch the farmers, we get more enemies. But that's not true, actually. But what is true is the Afghan drug industry is, went like maybe 1,000% under the occupation. It's more than 7 billion a year right now. 7 billion a year is a lot of money. I don't know how much is that money, because for us, we will never see that money anyway. And then, after 20 years of war in Afghanistan, many hundred thousands of Afghans died or killed by the Taliban and foreign forces, the Afghan regime, which is really, really corrupt. The whatever resources Afghanistan had, it was an estimate of 2 trillion of lithium, in Afghanistan, 2 trillion. Uranium is plenty in Afghanistan. This expensive stones, I don't know what you call it, stones, Afghanistan mountains, certain mountains is full of them. These are all dug out by, foreign forces or foreign regimes, taken out of Afghanistan with the help of dirty warlords and drug lords. And now, after 20 years, where nearly 49 countries invading Afghanistan, Taliban controlling now 60% of the Afghan land. And now the Taliban are even more stronger, and we had at one point nearly 300,000 foreign soldiers in Afghanistan, but they did not defeat the Taliban for some reasons. I don't know, maybe they know the reasons why they didn't want to fight. And now, the Taliban are going to come back to power, with the help of America and Britain, again, running away from Afghanistan and giving the Taliban a blank check, so every single day, you open the news in Afghanistan, innocent people are butchered, young women and children. Just 2 days ago in front of a school, primary school, 86 people were killed in an explosion, mostly young children, the parents recognized them only from their books. They didn't even know how to find their bodies. So this is the sort of Afghanistan: no security, no employment, but the worst people, the most corrupt people. It's not me who's saying, it's the American and it's their friends who are in power. They're saying that they're the most corrupt people in the world. And Afghanistan is the most dangerous country on earth, according to United Nations and other human rights organizations. After 20 years, America claimed to have spent nearly 900 billion in Afghanistan. 900 billion. Yeah, they say they spent 900 billion. That was like a year ago when I read. I don't know how many Britain spent there, in Australia and Germany, in France, in Italy, in New Zealand. And, you have zero security. because of the corrupt people in power. The West empowered the most corrupt people in Afghanistan. If they have listened to the wishes of Afghans, I listened to a press conference after 9/11 and after the Taliban were toppled. It was Shiri Blair and Laura Bush's wife. Someone asked them that, now the Taliban are gone, so what is for the women? You know what the answer was? They say women can wear lipsticks and nail polish. So, I don't think so. Priority for a woman is nail polish and lipstick. A woman wants to have security, want to have education, want to have some sort of employment. I see a lot of Scottish women who doesn't wear lipsticks or nail polish. They're, going around, but in a press conference live, they say, we liberated the women, they can wear lipsticks and nail polish. Women are not there to wear lipsticks and nail polish. They want some sort of employment, security, stability, education. But sadly, that was their answer. The kind of things you hear, you will be shocked. But the bottom line is, after 20 years, deliberately, the West, didn't want to bring security because they say, it's a conflict area, it's a graveyard for foreign powers. No, because the struggle is America wants to leave because China and Russia want to harm America with the help of Iran and Pakistan and others. So, they're trying to look for a quick exit. And the same person who's negotiating on behalf of the American government, Zalmay Khalilzad, who's originally Afghan, but he was an American ambassador in Iraq and Afghanistan. He said in 1996 that, we can empower the Taliban because, under the Taliban, we can bring that, gas pipeline. And they're, so they wanted to use the Taliban for their own benefit, but, whatever happened between them. So, and then again, when it comes to Bin Laden, Bin Laden was not even Afghan, he was brought into Afghanistan by America, to fight the Russians. And then the guys who attack and kill innocent people in America in 9/11, in New York and other places in America where innocent people were killed, they were not even Afghans, they were Arabs. Why then the West did not go and invaded Saudi Arabia? They should have gone after Saudi Arabia because all of them were rich. They had rich families in Saudi. They were funded and financed by Saudi. Why go after Afghanistan? Yes, Taliban are terrorists, but that wasn't the excuse, when the Taliban were terrorizing Afghans, especially women, before 9/11, it was okay because they were only terrorizing the Afghan women and the Afghan children and killing me and my family and others. But when they touch you, suddenly they become the bad people. They were bad even, before 9/11. They were the worst human beings that Afghanistan had ever had, followed by the warlords and drug lords, prior to them. But then suddenly they become terrorists overnight, and then every single minister in the Afghan cabinet is a foreign citizen, either the American or British or Australian or German, or none of them is Afghan. Yes, they are born in Afghanistan, but when trouble comes, they pack their bags and they run away and they will leave the Afghan to their miseries, Every single one of them is a foreign citizen. Not a single person is an Afghan citizen. They're all foreign citizens and taken away from America and Britain, Germany, Holland, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, and given the jobs because, they can steal and they can share the money.
If I'm not mistaken, Osama bin Laden was actually called a savior before when he was coming in to... it was in the newspaper. I just remembered the flash image of the newspaper stuck in my head where they were calling him a savior, and they had him walking behind with soldiers in the background.
If you listen to, I don't know if you can get access, but I have a video to the Ronald Reagan security advisor, and then some others. There was a British guy. They went to a refugee camp in Pakistan, Afghan refugee camp. And they were chanting Allah Akbar, non-Muslim chanting Allah Akbar, God is great, in that refugee camp. And he's telling the Afghans on the border with Pakistan that is your land, and your land is occupied by infidels, means Russians. A non-Muslims telling the Afghan Muslims that your land is occupied by infidels, who are the Russians. And he said, And in the video also, he said that to deceive the Afghan people, it's on the video. I forgot his name. It's a funny Russian kind of name, but or Eastern European name, the security advisor to Ronald Reagan. And he said to deceive the Afghan population, we have to bring people from the Middle East, especially Saudi, to fight in Afghanistan. So the Afghans, most of the population is uneducated, so they will say it's a holy war, it's a holy war, and let's stand against Russians. We fought the Western war, we fought your interests in Afghanistan, where 1.6 million Afghans were killed in the Russian occupation. But then when the time came, you walked away from us, you left us, to the warlords and the drug lords and the terrorists, but when we were fighting your war, we were the holy warriors, you call us the holy warriors. But when, your aim was achieved, that the Soviet Union was defeated in Afghanistan, you abandoned Afghanistan with full of weapons, all sorts of weapons were in Afghanistan. But it's sad, when you listen to politicians, I was on a debate with one military guy some time ago in London. He said alliances change, and the terrorists of yesterday become the hero of today, and the hero of today become a terrorist. He was quite right, So he told me I was naive, but I wasn't naive. I was just explaining the facts, what people are doing in Afghanistan, and it's really sad. It's not only in Afghanistan. I mean, it's in Iraq, in Libya and Syria. I remember David Cameron when he went to Benghazi. And he with that French president, I don't know what his name was before this president, and they both went to Benghazi Square in Libya, and they said we have liberated Libya. And now Libya had 3 different governments, So how you liberated Libya? Libya doesn't have a functioning regime. So that's the sort of things you want to tell your audience. That what we did in a foreign, you're standing there in a square with few puppets and saying we liberated Libya from Gaddafi. Yes, Gaddafi was a dictator, no doubt about it. But you have made Libya worse than Gaddafi.
I'm interested in the comments here.
Sorry. It's just to mention Libya's currency model. They were trying to get away from the oil currency model at that moment in time, if I'm not mistaken. They were trying to lobby around for it. So it wasn't based on the gold standard or the new petrodollar. It was based on something else I can't remember. But they were trying to move away from it at that moment in time, and I think it was 6 months to a year after. That's when the instigation of the overthrow of Gaddafi started. So I think that plays a huge factor. If you think about that they were trying to move away from the petrodollar and try and create their own.
No, but there's no doubt, Gaddafi was a dictator, Saddam was a dictator, no doubt. But if you look at the history of Saddam, who empowered him during the Gulf War against Iran? And it was every single European and Western regime were giving weapons to Saddam to fight against Iran. And then he became a dictator for some reasons. Yes, if you're invading your neighbor, and you want to become a dictator, you're a dictator. But it's just the general politics. But sadly, every war, like I saw it somewhere on the social media today, the conflict really affects the poor. The rich can move anywhere. You can invest £1 million in London and you can bring your family, easy. No one question you where you get the money. So it's the poor, who suffer, and the people who suffer the most are women and children. They cannot go anywhere.
What I was going to mention is if we look at the comments, it's been there've been some absolutely brilliant comments, by the way. Mia mentioned earlier on about your comments about Priti Patel, that Mia, one of our regular viewers, is half Indian, and she is feels that she's never been less represented by the government as she is at the moment, and I think that's a really good comment there. Also, with regards to Priti Patel, also people are mentioning Al Jazeera at the moment. Some people have said the only people who are given any sort of news on what's really going on in Afghanistan, and I don't know how good the news is from Al Jazeera, but it appears that it's been better. Now today, Al Jazeera's building in Gaza has been blown up, and I wondered if we had any, what do we think about that? What do you think about that, Mohammed?
I mean, to be honest, the state of Israel, is not going to stop by anything. The state of, I mean, how dare you go and attack? Not only Al Jazeera. I saw another guy. I don't know. I don't know which organization he represented. He said it live on TV. He said that his office is in the same building for 15, 16 years. He had never seen any Hamas member there. So it's just a blunt lie by the state of Israel. And they just want to get rid of people who can feed you a little bit of news. Al Jazeera News is far, far better than the BBC and the Sky and, so many other, media organization in the UK. And that piece of information coming from Al Jazeera, they just want to destroy it, You don't even have the regards for the freedom of press. And then you said we're a democratic regime in the Middle East. We're the only democratic regime. You going and bombing their office. It's like I saw it. It was like coming down like Twin Towers. And and I saw some people. The other day when other buildings were in similar position, I saw some people were dancing. In Israel, celebrating the collapse of the buildings. We do understand that both states have to live together. But the oppressed right now are the Palestinians. Yes, Hamas has to stop their missiles. But then, 80 different jet fighters, 80, have bombed Gaza so far. The conflict started just a few days ago. And Netanyahu is just doing it to stay in power. There's no any other excuse because he's having a corruption trial or whatever trial, and then he's not having a majority. So, he wants to create an impression that I'm the only person who can save you from Hamas or Palestinians, At the end, it's the poor Palestinian people who suffer, I mean, they can go after the leadership of Hamas and they can detain them very easily, But the problem is, it is the ethnic cleansing, as you call it, of Palestinian. Their land has been taken away, and their land has been taken every single day. That 15 or 20% of land they have, they're after it. And imagine we had this lockdown for the past 1 year. How we felt. We are very angry, because our freedom is taken away from us. And then since 1968 or 48, the Palestinians are in a similar position. You're not allowed to travel. You're not allowed to go out. You are not allowed to live your own life the way you want it. On the top, you are, killed for the mistakes of others. So the world has to wake up, and what we saw during Trump era was even worse, recognizing or removing the embassy, taking it to that, place and telling Palestinian, if you don't work with us, you will disappear. He came on live television that, we can remove Afghanistan from the world map. Live on CNN, Trump said, the leader of the free world, as you call it, that we can remove Afghanistan from the map of the world within 24 hours. So these are the same people, terrorizing people everywhere in the world, especially in Palestine. And I don't believe in what is that organization called? United Nations. It's just a corrupt organization, controlled by few individuals. People are after their positions. If I speak out, I will lose my job. That's what they do. The most corrupt organization on earth is the United Nations. They're hardly doing anything. At least speak out. What is happening right now? We have a prime minister here in Britain. We have the former chancellor. Is it Javed? What was his name? Javed something? I forgot his name. Sajid Javed.
Yes.
He gave an example. He said, imagine living in London and you are barraged by missiles, hello, you're comparing the power of Israel with the, Palestinian. Palestinian hardly had anything. They have no airport. They have no missiles. Yes, whatever Hamas is having, that should stop as well. We don't say that that's right. Hamas should stop. But in the meantime, Israel should withdraw, from the Palestinian land and leave the Palestinian land. It's their land. It's not your land. And although they have very little land, they're still saying, okay, we're happy in this land if you leave us alone. But still the state of Israel, is not happy. They want to get rid of them, or as Trump said, from the map of the world.
I know legal settlements. There has been resolutions from the UN. Obviously, you're saying it's a very corrupt organization. It's too bureaucratic with no power.
Yeah.
That's the problem, really. And then, as you say, it's bureaucratic in such to the point that if somebody speaks out, they're after their position. There's always that type of stuff.
No,
And
you
two,
break when you
powers.
break
It's
the
resolution.
when you break the UN resolution. Certain countries suddenly the West impose sanctions against them. How many times the state of Israel have ignored or refused to recognize any resolutions of the United Nations? None whatsoever. Seizing land from different countries. Treating the Arab population like their dirt. Those Arabs who are living in Israel, third citizens, not allowing them to do anything. If you voice your opinion, you're stripped of your citizenship. The new legislation they introduced some time ago that, if a Palestinian Arab, is not loyal to, or if you voice your opinion against the state of Israel, you should lose your citizen. What sort of, world we are living in, that you cannot express your opinion. I know a lot of people who have no faith, they don't believe in God, but they stand with us, They have a heart. I have a lot of Christian friends. I have gay friend, lesbian friend, mullah's friend, religious friends, all sort of friends, who come as a human being. We look at you, who you are. We don't look, that which country you come from and give you special treatments. No, but it's sad, that the world has come to this stage, and the world is silent on Palestine, especially. And like a lot of the, we don't expect anything from the, I cannot use the word here, but it's for the Arab states, head of states like Saudi and Qatar and UAE. These are basically, slaves, and they're responsible for the miseries of the Palestinian. If they voice out their opinion, that what is happening in Palestine, we know there are secret deals behind the scene between Saudi Arabia and Israel and Bahrain and Qatar and others. Okay, every country have their own choice to establish relationship with Israel, but you should, press that, the Palestinian rights should be respected. I mean, it's horrible. Imagine if I'm a Jew, no disrespect to any Jew, because I have a lot of Jewish friends here in Scotland and Britain. You're Jewish, and when you lose your home here, you can go to Israel and you can have a home, you can have a citizenship, and you can live there. But if you're a Palestinian, you're not allowed to go back to your land. What sort of world we are living in? You cannot return to your homeland. Like you are living in your home, and I say, don't come here again. How would you feel? Taking your property, your dignity, your life. Your children are being killed or tortured, and then I tell you, don't come to your home. How would you feel?
I think one of the most powerful things I've seen over the weekend, someone who's been a guest on this show, David Rosenberg, who's a really lovely man. I'm not sure if you know him. He's really lovely, and we've interviewed him on this show before. And he showed a group of Jewish people campaigning for Palestinian rights, and this is nothing to do with religion. This is to do with power. This is to do with capitalism, and this is the state of Israel. That are doing these things, and I find it awful when people try to bring religion into it.
Yeah.
And try to change it into something it's not, to try and argue against the rights of the Palestinian people. It's such an awful situation that you see, and I can't imagine living like that. And I can't imagine all the things that you've described. We can't imagine these things, having lived, having never been at risk of being bombed or risk of losing.
Today I saw a lady, can't remember who she was, and she was telling the story of Palestinian mother. The mother said that I put my children to sleep. We sleep in the same room. Before, the children were sleeping in a separate room. But since the conflict started, we sleep in the same room that if we were killed together.
I've seen the same thing. It was not
Yeah,
fair.
see,
Yeah.
I mean, how, that's the life of Palestinian, that, when you're killed, that at least you kill together, and like, God forbid, I think you were saying that you are going to put your children to sleep before we start this program. But you will never think in a million years that this thing will happen to you, or this thing will ever happen here. But, in Palestine, it's not only in Palestine, in so many parts of the world, it's happening. And we don't rely on the head of our government, like Boris or whoever is the head of states. The people should come together in a peaceful manner, and stand up against the oppression, against the aggression, like what we stood against the war in Iraq. And, like Laura was saying that today was 150,000, in marching in London against the, conflict in Gaza. So people should come, together, because we don't really rely on our prime ministers or presidents, because they will not do anything for us. Boris took a week to, issue a statement, and then we have Sajid Javid coming with blaming everything on the Palestinian. We have a lot of head of states, there's we have Sky and BBC showing, rockets from Hamas, but they're not showing the 80 jet fighters, 80 jet fighters, F-16 in the latest jet fighters, the state of Israel is having bombing Gaza, targeting buildings, civilian areas. Where would the Palestinian residents from Gaza go? There is no open field that they can go and escape, the bombing, because it's a densely populated area. They have no space to go out and save their lives. But I think the leaders of the world, should call for a ceasefire immediately. And they should recognize the state of Palestine, and whatever land they have should be recognized, and they should live, as we always campaign, side by side, because both nations or both states have to live, and the people of Palestine will not disappear. I'm sure, they will live there, whether it's occupation or no occupation, but they will still be on the planet, on the face of the earth, they will not disappear. But I think people should come out in a peaceful manner, and telling Boris and his co and others that what is happening, it's not in our name. Whether, we're Muslims or Jews or Christian or Hindus, it doesn't matter. As you said, we're all human beings. I came to this country as a stranger. I knew no one. I make hundreds and thousands of friends. I lost my brother's family in 2013. There was an explosion in his house. My brother was killed, his wife, his son. And then his youngest son, who was only 33 days old, he survived, but he lost his face completely. I appealed to the Scottish government and the Scottish people, and they brought him here, for medical treatment. And he's living with me now because his parents are killed in the explosion. His brother, who was 1 year old, was killed, and he was the only survivor, in the family. So the point is, the strangers in this country, in Scotland, came out and told the Scottish government that my boy has to be brought here for life-saving treatment. If you Google, Scotland's child, the media give him a title, Scotland's child. After he arrived here, you will see that who he is. He's now 7 years old, living with me, very clever, doing things in his own way. So I'm just saying that, humanity can work when we want to work together. I knew when the people who supported my call to bring the boy here, I didn't know anyone of them. I hardly knew anyone. And they wrote letters to the Home Secretary, not to the Home Secretary, to the Scottish government. And the Scottish government said they can treat him here, but the problem is because the British government has to give him a visa to come here. So, he came here with the help of strangers. I knew no one. And they supported my call. And the boy is just a big boy now. He's 7 years old. He's in primary 3.
Wow. I can't respond to that. That's such a moving story. And
no, it's just, I say when humans, they want to work together, you can work together, and the world is full of good people. That's why the world is still intact, There are more good people than bad people in this world. In this country, in Scotland, I lived for nearly 21 years. And I tell you, This, I meet people in Asda, in Tesco's, in supermarkets, and they, old women comes to me, are you that person who appeal? Yeah. And then stick this, it's their heart what matters, and they said, can you buy chocolate for your boy? That really struck my heart, I mean, my boy doesn't need chocolate, but look at her heart, the way she treats me and the way she has that feelings, So we should have it all for others as well, I mean, when it comes to me, so I should treat others the same, and the world is, full of good people. And I'm so glad that I make Scotland my home, or Glasgow my home. And I'm really glad. I'm thankful to the Home Office where London was full and they sent me. Yeah. So,
as I say, that's so moving, and I think that brings us full circle as well, because the title of this program is Glasgow Shows Us How Solidarity Should Be Done. And it's like what an amazing testament to that city, to the country. And there are good people when the real people run the country. What an amazing thing that can happen. What an amazing world we could live in if the right people were in charge. Because I'm like you, and I think we're all like this. We on Socialist Think Tank, we believe in humanity, and we believe that people are better. They are more good than bad. We've had someone from Kashmir send their solidarity to the people of Palestine, which is absolutely wonderful, and solidarity to the people of Kashmir as well, because they're
similar
having
issues,
terrible time.
And
we need to support the people of Kashmir as well.
Kashmir, yeah.
I was just, I think we'll just spend the last couple of minutes just wrapping up. Thank you everyone for the comments. That's going to be my wrapping up statement. I think we'll come to Mohammad last to make a last statement. Laura.
Yeah, I really want to talk for like 3 hours after that. I really want to comment on everything you've said. It's been amazing, but I won't. A couple of things I do want to say. The lady who posted about putting her children into bed, if you want a real view and a real rude awakening of what is happening to the Palestinian people, follow her on Twitter. She's called Iman Basha.
Yeah, Iman Basha, yeah.
It was the US Congresswoman,
yeah, she said it, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, she's the one who talked about it in government, and that's what really got everybody to this lady's page. But she's posting videos of men screaming on their knees on piles of rubber looking for their family. A little baby who's a few weeks old, who's the sole survivor of the family.
Yeah.
Things like that we could not even comprehend, and it's awful and it's painful to read, but people need to read it. People need to see what's happening and understand what's happening. Also, another comment I just wanted to quickly make is that this is a really simplistic view of it, and I recognize that there are many layers, but it does feel like the one thread that goes through all of these atrocities and all of these awful groups, like that are ruling the world, is capitalism. It's money. The terror goes where the money is, and like you said, the British people and US people, just like had the Afghan people fighting in their war and they're amazing. It's like, we're done with you now because we've got what we want, and it's because they go where the money is, and it feels like that's what's been happening for centuries, and it's still happening. And people need to realize that these so-called wars on terror are not what they're billed to be, and people need to wake up to that a little bit. And finally, just to say thank you again to Mohammad. Honestly, it's been really just it really has been inspiring to have you on today. And
thank you for asking me to come. Thank you.
Yeah, you're not getting rid of us either. We're going to be in touch all the time now.
No. If you visit Glasgow, be our guest. Yeah, you're welcome here anytime. You can come.
Next time I come up and see Celtic play.
Yeah. You can feel the Afghan hospitality anytime.
Awesome.
Or Glasgow hospitality. Yeah.
James, did you want to say anything?
I just want to say what an absolute display of solidarity that has been, not just within Glasgow, but on tonight's show with your stories. the way you've wrapped up in the way that you did with the stories and that you've described tonight, the horrific ones, all the way up until the fun and happy ones. The fact that you were able to mobilize a community based off your media channels and social media of itself to be able to get everybody around the table and get what you did needed to be done. I hold my hat off to that whole community and yourselves. I would love to obviously get involved in that type of thing, because we have a detention centre in County Durham that we're very much fighting at the moment. So any help or advice in that regard would be amazing. And I would also just like to quickly say, if you want to get involved in Socialist Think Tank, you can do at members.socialistthinktank.com. And there is no membership fee or anything like that. Sign up as a member, join the WhatsApp group. We're hopefully getting a Discord to start mobilizing a little bit more accurately. Now, I'd like to say, Mohammed, I made a lot of notes tonight.
Thank you very much.
It's been a huge learning experience for me. That's one of the reasons why I kept quiet as much as I did, because I'm, like a lot of people even in the chat here, it's a learning experience for us all. That's why we're here, really. That's why I'm here. I'm here to learn, and I'm here to try and promote as many voices as possible.
Thank you very much. Thank you for asking me to come. Thank you.
Yeah. So finally for you, Mohammed, I'm going to leave you with the very final word, and then we'll just wave and say goodbye. But we do want to give you massive thanks for coming on, giving us your time, giving us your experience. It's been very moving, and I think you've been an incredible guest, and we're so grateful.
Thank you.
So any final words, please do take it away. And
I don't know what else to say, honestly, but all I want to say is, just before the corona, none of us realized that, we would be in this situation, and a disease which is called corona would come, and we will be like, sentenced to our homes, spending a year sentence, for committing no crimes, living in our house. Anything could happen in life. Britain is a very rich country, and corona came and a lot of people become penniless, and sadly so many died, who could have survived. But again, as you said, capitalism, and selfishness, of the British state, didn't do the right job, and so many people, sadly died, and they died in a very, very difficult circumstances. I know, as I said, my family, things happened to my brother, my younger brother, and his family, that you are not allowed to say goodbye to your husband or your brother or your son or your sister, or whoever your relative was in the hospital. You want to hug him or her or touch him, and want to listen in the last few minutes, it was he or she wants to tell you. And they're dying in the hospitals on their own, because of coronavirus, which we never expected, or the COVID they never expected. And that person who is on the hospital bed, know for sure that, no one is allowed to come near me, because before he or she went into that hospital, he or she knows already the rules that no one is coming near me to hug me or kiss me or, comfort me. So that must have been the worst feeling, and no one can really imagine what that person went through. And it's the same in wars, in poverty, and where people are bombed, and they're screaming for help and support, and there is none available. The same is here with asylum seekers and refugees, where you're in a very strange country, you don't speak the language, you don't know the culture, you don't know anyone, but you are here on your own, and you're running from persecution. Yes, we always say that, we are accused that not everyone should come here. Yeah, not everyone is coming here. The tiny amount of asylum seekers make it to Britain. The rest make it to the poor countries. As I said, in Pakistan, few million Afghans. In Iran, few million Afghans. In Lebanon, poor country again. Jordan, very poor country. Iraq, very poor country, hosting, Syrian refugees. Millions of them are there, they're not millions of them are coming here, even not 40,000 came to this country, or 50,000 in the last year. So they went all to the poor countries. So what my appeal to the general public is, treat your neighbor and look after your neighbor. I mean, as a Muslim, as a probably, I'm not very religious, but I believe in this fundamental principle that, on the day of judgment, when I die, and when there was someone hungry on my street, God will ask me that someone was hungry, but you are having all your kebab in your palau, in your, you had a full stomach, but someone was hungry and suffering, and you didn't bother to look after your neighbor. So look after your neighbor, whether you believe in religion or not. It's another thing. I'm not asking people to go and follow religion, but I'm saying is follow your heart and look at human beings as they are. We're all human beings, and I think the world can become a better place and a beautiful place. Is how it works. Imagine if we all wear, all of us today wearing the same clothes, we wouldn't be looking beautiful, or handsome. Laura is beautiful in her own clothes. You are different, I'm different, you're different. So we are a variety. It's like pickles. I do these jokes, to keep my audience awake. We're like pickles. There's every single flavor in it. You have chili, you have the sourish cucumber, and you have something sweet in it. That's how the beauty of a pickle is, although it might not be expensive, but you really enjoy it. When something is really hot or sourish or bitter, you think, why is this? So if we were all the same color, I think we wouldn't be enjoying ourselves. The beauty is, in different culture and in different backgrounds. And we're end of the day, if you cut yourself, we have the same blood, which is really, really good. The same blood, the same color. But look after one another, and asylum seekers, as I say, sometimes people say they are human beings too. Yes, we are human beings. We are not from another planet. But mobilize your community. Don't rely on the state, because the state will not come and help you. Because what the state will do is they will cut your pension, they will cut your benefit, they will cut whatever you have. When you die, your house, you have to pay whatever that inheritance tax. Although you are married and you're husband and wife, but in Scotland it's no longer. I don't know how it works in England. But as I say, look for one another and love one another. And life is very short. I tell you one last practical joke, which my immigration solicitor, he's a very funny guy, Celtic supporter as well. His wife is writing, his wife is storyliner for different soaps. So there was an Afghan asylum seeker. He used to come to him every week, say, how is my asylum claim? When I'm getting a decision, when I'm getting my decision. So he took his file. He said, gentlemen, take your file. Life is very short. The home office takes too long, So, life is short, we need to love each other and care about each other. So that's the beauty of the life. I know some people love money. We all need money to survive, but money is not everything in life. Trust me, some people were very rich or still very rich, but they don't enjoy, life. So we can sleep at night better than the rich, because the rich are thinking, I'm losing shares and I'm losing, businesses. So at least we can go to our bed, thinking that we have done something better. Even if we help one person, it's not lost, it's much better. And at the end, you can share the link with us so we can send it to our friends as well, if there is any link here. Thank you.
We definitely will, and I think we'll all sleep a little bit better knowing that there are people like you in the world. Thank you so much. We're going to say goodbye
Thank
now.
You.
See you.
Thank you very
everyone.
much. Have a nice night. Yeah, take care. Bye-bye. Yeah, bye-bye. Send me the link, please. Yeah, thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye.
Bye. Bye.